This is Dr. Parikh, and welcome to Writing in Psychology. This is the syllabus overview. It's designed for the online course primarily, but I also do talk a bit about differences for the in-person class. The two classes are run heavily similarly. The main difference is that the online class gets all your feedback through Blackboard, and the in-person class gets most of your feedback in person. But we'll talk a little bit about how that works. You both use all the same videos. So this is the syllabus overview. I tend to leave these up for a few years because the syllabus tends to change very slowly. Things like office hours change every semester, and sometimes even mid-semester I'll find that something different works, especially if a lot of students keep needing times outside of what I have scheduled. I might try to adapt to accommodate them in the scheduled office hours instead of having empty office hours and then a bunch of appointments. I highly recommend scheduling an appointment. You can click this here. And right now it's going to say nothing. I don't think I've put any of my office hours in yet, so it's not going to show anything yet. But it will show appointments. And the nice thing is, if I have extra bits of time, I can just throw them in there. I can also, what's really nice is if I have an emergency, like if I get a call that my kid has to be picked up, or one time it was that he was the daycare was calling an ambulance for him. Emergencies happen. I also get migraines or get sick sometimes, but especially having a little person in my home who needs a lot of care, sometimes I just have to cancel things. And sometimes I won't be able to notify you, but usually if I have an appointment, I was, emailing people on the stroller walk home from daycare or from the ER. So I can at least email you and let you know if I have an issue. As of right now, again, it's January 2022 right now, everything is virtual. I am not always, like some of these days, I'm not even necessarily planning to be on campus regularly. If I do switch to more in person, I might have to shift those office hours. But for now, everything is virtual. If you really want to meet in person, we can discuss an outdoor meeting or maybe meeting in a slightly larger room. But my office is too small for me to feel comfortable meeting right now, especially because, as I mentioned, I have a little person in my house and I have spent more, like 54 more days than I have wanted to with him in hospital settings. So, yeah. But you can schedule. You don't have to schedule. You can't, or well, if they're virtual, you kind of need a link. So you would need to schedule. If the office hours that are listed either here on the syllabus or if you look and see what's actually offered, if those aren't available, or if none of those work, let me know. Now, if there's nothing listed, it might just be that I'm booked up. Everybody else has booked them, and during busy times, I may not be able to make more available. Sometimes I can double up people from the same class to give a little bit of time to everybody. But also, if the office hours just don't work for you, I am very open to trying to make things work. Email me, suggest at least 3 different days and times. Keep in mind that most faculty typically don't work on weekends and evenings. However, right now, depending on my childcare situation, sometimes evenings actually work really well if my kid is out of school for various reasons. And if you really, if you explain to me why you can't meet during regular hours and give me several choices, I might be able to make something work. Course, so this is who I am. I'm, again, Dr. Parikh, she, her. Please let me know what you like. I like to be called Dr. Parikh. As you get to know me more, I'm fine with Dr. P as well, and you'll see me sign emails like that sometimes. Please let me know what you like to be called and the pronouns you use. So writing in psychology is writing intensive. So for Caldwell University, you have to take your English writing, college writing, whatever. Sorry, English department. You take your required writing course, and then you also take, and that one's considered writing intensive, and then they say take a second writing intensive course, and this fulfills that. So psych majors automatically, as part of your requirements, you get your writing intensive. That means we do a lot of writing, and we don't just write a lot, we write, we get feedback, we edit, we make it better. This is also focused on understanding how we write in APA style, which is designed by the American Psychological Association. Let me see if I can make this a little bigger. I think I can, and still see everything I need to see. It's not just how you cite and how you format your page headings and margins. It's also the kinds of words you use, the way that you structure things, your overall tone and purpose in writing. You need to have PS213 passed with a C or better to take this course. Required course materials, we use Academic Writer, which you can get for free through Caldwell University Jennings Library. So I think that's Jennings and I misspelled that. And the links in the to-do list should take you right to what you need to do, where you need to go to get that. But you'll need to log in through the library to make it work. There's optional courses. This is a book I liked for a long time and used. Writing with Style APA made it easy, but when I saw how cool Academic Writer was and wanted to add it on, I needed to take something off. You can also choose to get a copy of the publication manual for APA, the APA Style manual, but you don't really need to anymore unless you just like having a physical copy that you can mark up and put little stickers on, highlight little post-its, those sorts of things, because the APA Style blog is fabulous. And actually I might add a link there under course materials. So a lot of if you look at the to-do list, a lot of the readings come from the APA Style blog, or their handouts, or from Academic Writer. And this link would take you right to that document I just went to. This is where you find all of the what do I do, where do I link, the videos I'm still going through and updating for this semester. This one, I don't know if I'll keep it up every semester, but for this semester I updated specific dates for the online course. And then I always start with the online course because that's kind of the most tricky to get settled. And then I make a separate version that I'll share. I call it the module to-do list because yours don't go week by week. Modules go they're a little more finicky for the in-person, because online we just follow typically the same schedule no matter what. But in person I have to think about holidays and other things quite a bit more. Course goals. So your goal is, my first goal is that you will practice information literacy skills, including finding, evaluating, and using psychological research. So you're going to work with journal articles. How do you find them? How do you read them? How do you decide if it's going to work for your paper? And how do you write about them clearly? How do you read them and then write about them clearly? Next, you'll understand the process of writing a literature review paper and a research proposal in APA style. So you will be able to figure out thesis statements, research questions. You will be able to follow the format of an APA literature review. You'll transition from a lit review to a research proposal, still using all the required sections. You'll use citations and reference lists, and you're going to have an unbiased scientific and academic tone. You're also going to write clearly and concisely. So a lot of it is just learning how to find a voice for this style of writing. And at first it's going to feel very false and awkward and not at all like you. And by the time you hit your, experimental and capstone, my hope is that it started to feel more and more like you. And especially if you go on to grad school or do other work in psychology, you're able to continue building that voice and feeling more and more comfortable with it. It's just another version of yourself that you step in and out of like any other role or any other style of communicating. Students will enhance their understanding of the writing process. So we do a lot of pre-writing activities. We talk about how to read, how to take notes, how to pull out main ideas, how to edit as we go, and how to outline and organize. You're going to be able to edit. Whoop, that was not supposed to happen. Use feedback to edit. You're going to give a lot of feedback to your peers because each of you are going to notice different things. And even if two people are on the same level, just having written it, being the one who wrote it gives you the cursive knowledge. And so it can be hard to see mistakes that are more obvious to other people. You're also going to understand plagiarism, what it is, and how to avoid it. We spent a lot of time early on breaking bad habits and clarifying what is expected of college level writing. There's also overall learning goals for the psych department. Identify major concepts, theoretical perspectives, empirical findings, and historical trends in psychology. So this is going to focus more on sort of the you're gonna learn about a specific topic that you get to choose. We do a little more of the basic research methods in psychology. So how do you design a study? How do you write it up in APA style? How do you write a literature review in APA style? And critical thinking, which is essential for writing. You're going to be able to evaluate what you're reading. You're going to critique it from a scientific perspective. And you're also going to be aware of myths, stereotypes, assumptions. That's a big piece of how we write. For example, you hear me say over and over again, do not use the word prove. We never say prove in science because that lets us fall into a lot of negative patterns. It's not empirical to say prove. Okay, course requirements, class policies. I'm going to focus on, again, the online course because you only have the video. I might flip over and check if I'm missing something from the in-person class. All right, so Blackboard is what has all of our information. That is where everything goes through. I also do use Google Docs quite a bit. I have the PS213 shared folders. There's a lot of information in there. I have right now a separate folder specifically for online just to make it a little easier to keep those separate. I might make another folder for in-person as well. This looks like it just needs to be cleaned up a little bit. I like to keep things a little tidier. But all of that stuff is linked. I like using Blackboard and Google Docs and YouTube because it's a lot easier for me to tweak as I go so I can be constantly improving things. And because I'm usually teaching 3 sections of the course. And so if I make a change in Blackboard, I have to make it 3 different times. But if I make it in a Google Doc or a YouTube video, it just changes everywhere. So I use those tools quite a bit, but everything comes together in Blackboard. Blackboard is where you submit absolutely everything. Checking Blackboard daily for announcements and messages. Honestly, now that I've learned how to make contact lists, I have been doing a lot more things through email. I always use your Caldwell University email. Anybody could make a first name, last name at gmail.com email with your information. So I am very cautious because legally I need to protect your information, including whether you're even in a class with me. So I will always use your Caldwell University email. Often when people sign up for, like you can see here, this is where I clicked to make appointments. You can see up here, it shows my sparikh@caldwell.edu because that's the account I'm in. I've started using Google Chrome profiles so that, and you can see I have a different one for my private Gmail. But I use that so that all my work stuff opens up, all my Caldwell stuff opens up in my Caldwell email address. Often when people make appointments, it defaults to a private email address. For that, how I handle it is when I add in the recording or the meeting code, I add an invite to your Caldwell email. And that's how I handle that. Let's see. I highly recommend using Mozilla Firefox for Blackboard. It is the only one that works consistently, and even then Blackboard can still be difficult. But I literally keep Firefox on my computer only for Blackboard. It's the only thing I use it for on my computer. Technical difficulties happen. That's why you shouldn't wait until the last minute. I cannot help you last minute on things. IT cannot necessarily reset your password on the last minute, so make sure that you are keeping up to date with things you need to keep up to date with, and not waiting until the last minute to do stuff repeatedly. If your problem is specifically with Blackboard with just uploading the assignment, you can occasionally email me the assignment itself, the document, and also like a PDF or a doc file. but also the next day you need to be continuing to try to submit. If it's more than a day or two late into Blackboard, even if you emailed me a file, or if you are consistently, time after time emailing me files, I may stop doing that. But I very, very rarely will give feedback through email. And even if I do, you don't get points until it's in Blackboard. It's also really important that you use PDF or doc files. And sometimes you need to make sure that .pdf or .doc is in the file name. PDF tends to work best, but it's your choice. Anything can be converted into a PDF. Word or Google Docs files work fine. If you just include a link to a Google Doc, that's not going to work. I need to be able to see it in Blackboard. Occasionally, depending on the assignment, if you include a link to a Google Doc as well, I will go comment in the Google Doc instead. But Blackboard has gotten pretty good for feedback, so much of the time I will give feedback in Blackboard no matter what. And I will only take an assignment if there is a PDF or doc file. There's a few reasons. For one, Google Docs can change over time. I want a record of exactly what your document looked like at the time. Also, I use SafeAssign quite a bit, and when you don't have a PDF or doc file, it doesn't run through SafeAssign. So even if I can access it, I want it in SafeAssign. This class, especially the online class, but even the in-person version, it is very tightly timed. And so if I can't grade a file when I sit down to grade, I might not be able to grade it for another week. So even if you re-upload it right away, it's just really, really tough. I will try to give some feedback to late assignments, but there's no guarantees, and it's typically going to be less detailed feedback than I give when I sit down to grade. When I set up the schedule, when I set up my weekly schedule, whole deal, I mentally plan for when in my week am I going to be able to grade assignments that are coming in. So late assignments are very, very problematic in this course. I also find that students get overwhelmed sometimes, and if they think that they can submit late, then they can let things pile up a bit. And it ends up just hurting them in the end, I think, because they end up dug into a hole they can't get out of. And sometimes that's past the withdrawal deadline. So what I've learned works best for this course is a no late work policy. And I'll talk a little more about that later. But it makes things really, really difficult for me. And honestly, I think it's best for students when they stay on track with the due dates that I originally set up. It's really important. It's really just up to you that things get uploaded. It's just a reality thing. If it's not in there, I can't grade it. A big thing that started happening recently is files. When you change the file name, make sure that .pdf or .doc stay at the end, because if there's nothing at the end, your computer knows what to do with it because it's already encoded that information, but Blackboard won't know what to do with it. And often with those kinds of files, sometimes I can download them and open them, but then I can't comment the same way I can in Blackboard. And again, I am really pressed for time when I'm doing these. And so adding extra steps really creates a lot of problems. So as you're naming things, just make sure you're doing PDF or doc. You can always go to My Grades and check to see that everything shows up the way it's supposed to. It's really up for you. It's also very important that you are regularly checking your graded assignments for comments and for rubric. I have developed incredibly detailed rubrics for almost all of the assignments in here. So I may not be commenting what to change, but I will comment where the errors are, because my role here is not to be your editor. My role is to help you see where you're doing well and where you still need to improve. One thing I've been doing lately as a code is sometimes if there's nothing that quite needs to have points docked, but I want to draw your attention to an issue, I will put I'll put an extra 0.001 instead of an even grade for it, because sometimes if someone has full points on an assignment, they might not think that anything is wrong. Another issue is early assignments. I have I typically grade very gently, so you can make a lot of mistakes and still get a pretty good grade. So even if you lose fractions of a point, make sure you're looking back for that feedback, because small mistakes on an early assignment, uncorrected, can lead to much larger penalties later. Especially because one of the things I evaluate on your final papers is, are you following up on feedback from previous assignments? Course structures, the online, for both types of sections, both formats, I use 7 units. I follow the same modules. Online, they're typically 7 one-week units. This spring 2022 semester is a little funky. We'll talk about that in a bit. For the in-person class, there's a lot more ebb and flow each semester, just with when we have breaks and all of those sorts of things. I try not to have big things due right after a break. I can't always make that work because of all the constraints. I still use the same module format, but it's not always as clean as it is for the online class. Class discussions, both formats use BlackBoard quite a bit. Right now, the format for the in-person class, there's not a lot of peer-to-peer interaction with students in class, partly because we've been virtual, we're doing social distancing. In the past, I did a lot more student contact, but for now, the upside is you're only coming in usually once a week, and sometimes only for half of that class period. There's a few weeks you come in twice, but you have a lot of outside time where you complete the videos and the discussions. So you have more flexibility. There's still a lot to do. Make sure that you're using that class time to work on other things. I often ask you to give feedback. Make sure that you are being constructive and supportive. Late policy. The one assignment that I'm really flexible on are APA quizzes. Those I will take pretty much any time before the end of the class. I have them timed when I think they're going to be useful to you. You can also take those as many times as you want. The other thing I will take late is the 2 final papers, because that would be a lot of points to lose for being a little late. I take 5% per day, but keep in mind that means that after 20 days, it is worth nothing. And this penalty I may actually change over time, or I may put a limit on how late something can be, because very late, even being 20 days late or 10 days late, can really throw off the class. Nothing else is accepted late. I will say the discussions, I have a due date for your first post, and then for the follow-ups, those I usually will focus on the follow-up day, which is typically 4 days after the original post due date. So usually as long as you have everything in by the time I'm grading, as a whole, that's a little bit more flexible. For the in-person class, keep in mind anything that is due at class time is definitely not accepted late. So any of the writing assignments, like the outlines, the articles, notes, those are not accepted late. And as I've mentioned before, if it's in the wrong file type, or also if it doesn't have all the attachments I ask for, it's really important that I have the reference documents. So if you're doing article notes, I need your original document. I need your original article. And it's really hard for me to do my job effectively without it. So if it's not submitted altogether, it doesn't count as submitted. And it's really just because the course is very tightly scheduled. I just can't function without these things in place. On the flip side, I keep most of the assignments very small, and I've even cut it down. I've cut it down even more this semester. I think almost everything is worth just 10 points out of the 1,000 in the course. So it's lots and lots of small assignments. You can miss a few here and there or be late with a few. Missing is more problematic because you don't get the feedback. If you're just a little late, you still at least get the feedback. But so that way, because I understand everybody makes mistakes, everybody forgets a deadline or has an emergency come up that they weren't expecting. Even if you usually do things early, stuff just happens. So that's how I balance it out, is that I keep those small, unforgivable assignments, unforgivable just meaning late, not like I won't like you anymore. I keep them reasonable. Speaking of liking you, I like you. You're a cool person. And none of this, the grades you receive in this course, the feedback, it's all about what you have done in this moment of time. I don't expect perfection. And I've even, even saying try your best is hard. It's hard to decide what is your best. If you could still physically stay awake, even though you're exhausted and getting, having all sorts of issues from lack of sleep, if you could stay awake, is it your best if you go to sleep? So instead, I'm going to say make a reasonable effort. Every time you sit down to do this course, I want you to say make a reasonable effort. And even people who don't do well in the course overall, where the semester doesn't go the way they wanted, they still have things that they have done well over that course. They've still grown through the course. Again, technical difficulties happen. Plan for them as best you can. Occasionally there are times when BlackBoard just is impossible, and that you certainly can't do anything about. But as much as possible, be creative and flexible. Try to, if it's an occasional thing and you're able to show me that the assignment was done, like get the assignment in my email box and then get it submitted to BlackBoard the next day. Always include a comment to remind me why it's late and that you emailed me, because otherwise I will forget. I have way too many students, way too many moving pieces to remember that you told me something was going to be late. And that I said okay. You always want to get it, if it's a conversation face-to-face, send me an email right after to say, we talked about this and you said it was okay. And then when I forget, I'll look back and be like, oh, they sent me an email and I didn't say they were wrong, so that was probably true. So get things in writing, include reminders when you submit things, and this should be a rare thing. If it happens over and over, I might pull the plug on that particular little forgiveness. This is in what I call my pandemic pink, which is, there's a lot more in the regular syllabus, the in-person syllabus, because we are doing in-person or face-to-face or synchronous or whatever. But I will say, if you have something happen that's kind of a big thing that's going to affect more than a couple days for you, reach out to me and we will talk. We'll talk about strategies you can use. I can help you sort of prioritize assignments and issues. Sometimes it's easy, occasionally it is easier just to say, all right, let's just forget that assignment and you can just figure it out later. Although again, the assignments really build in this class, so that's a little hard to do. And depending on what kind of documentation you have, there are times where we can make some plans to help you spread out the makeup work. At the same time, if you're in the accelerated online class, things move really, really fast. And so if something really bad happens early in the semester, we got to talk really seriously about whether it's realistic to stay. My goal is always to be pragmatic and to have students stay if they can succeed and leave if they are going to be draining time and energy into it and getting not a good outcome. Email, I am pretty responsive on emails, but I also, this is my job. This is my job for the ongoing however long. I was a student for a very long time with a very weird work schedule, and I still often do work odd hours, but I want to be in control of those odd hours. So expect most emails to come during weekdays. And keep in mind, I have a lot of days where I'm in meetings most of the day, or I'm teaching most of the day. If it has been 2 business days, like not days that the university is closed, and you still haven't gotten anything, then assume that it just got lost and send me a polite follow-up saying, I was just friendly reminder that I emailed you or something like that. If you're asking for help last minute, I can't necessarily help you, especially if it's, after about 4 or 5 o'clock on a weekday, because remember, email isn't always the very first or very last thing I'm doing on a day. It is always helpful if you tell me your course number and including section, especially like online versus in person, and some sort of topic in the subject line. People who don't put subject lines in, if they say, oh, I emailed you about that previously, it's really, really hard to find those emails. And make sure I know your full name. Sometimes it doesn't show up clearly in email. And if you have a bunch of different things, if you're asking me about a recommendation for something, and also asking about your course schedule because you happen to be my advisee, and asking about class, make sure that all of those are separate emails. If you ask for something that's pretty obviously available, especially if it's something like a due date that I would have to look up anyway, I'm going to tell you. You can find that in the syllabus. Again, you cannot submit through email. Occasionally, if you are having a Blackboard issue, you can send it to me to say, I can't upload it for some reason, but it is complete. You can see it, and then once it's uploaded to Blackboard, I'll compare to make sure that it was the same copy of the document. And then, because it's just really easy for people to send me, let's say, a Google Doc link and then keep working, or send a file and hope that I don't open it. So I want to make sure, because I am very strict on late submission, I try to make sure that it's not easy to get around that, because then it's not fair to the people who are honest. Office hours. I love office hours. I love to meet with people. I talk about being in my office, but again, with the world the way it is right now, I am not always even on campus when I hold office hours. Sometimes I have virtual days too, for various reasons. Like a lot of, for this spring, usually after there's a break, I'm choosing to be virtual the day after that, to allow people a little more flexibility and for just various reasons. So they're fully virtual right now. I can get creative if it's really important to you to meet in person. I get that. So if we can be flexible on time and setting, we can find ways, but my office is not a great setting. And part of my flexibility, especially with virtual, I'm able to be a lot more flexible during the week. And even, like I said, weekends I usually don't meet, but occasionally if it's last minute, I'm unlikely to do so, but occasionally I can do evening meetings as well. I want to make clear that is a very individual choice, and it's partly because especially if I have to cancel office hours because of an emergency, I'll certainly open up evenings and sometimes even weekends. So partly it's just kind of, I have a lot of weirdness happening right now too, and so sometimes after my kid is in bed is the best time for me to do work. Fun fact, it is still New Year's Day. You'll find at least one other video that I did today because I'm not sure how much childcare I'll have. Let's see. Counseling resources. Life is stressful, especially right now. This class can be stressful, and especially if you choose a topic that is very close to your own history of difficulties, then you may find things that were previously under control being less under control. So we have counseling services on campus. There are also there's campus security. You can always call 911 for a crisis situation. So if you or someone around you is having very serious thoughts of hurting or killing themselves, you can always call 911 and ask for a crisis response. There's also many different hotlines you can call, including the New Jersey Hope Line. I might also add in here, I have there's also chat and text resources, which may be helpful. But just keep in mind, earlier in the semester is usually better because as people get more and more stressed, the caseloads kind of fill up. So it might be, if you're thinking this might be something you're interested in this semester, you might go early just as like a checkup. Okay, I've already mentioned APA quiz assignments can come late. Final papers can come late with a penalty. Everything else is, discussions, I usually go by that 4 days after, is when I grade everything. Other than that, most assignments are not accepted late, but they're also specifically broken up to be fairly low stakes, the build-up assignments. But without feedback on those, it's really tough to do well on the leader assignments. Absolutely nothing will be accepted after the last day of the course. Let's see. So your points, about a quarter of your points come from discussion boards, and this is true for both versions of the class. As of now, this is the sort of thing I tinker with over time. So check the syllabus for the semester you're in, if it's not still spring 2022, because there might be slight differences. Your two final papers, I have increased these points values a bit, so I'm trying to make the final papers more important for your grade and the early assignments less important. And I was looking, some students tend to do better overall in the class than they do on their final papers. Others struggle with maybe turning in assignments or doing well on some of the early stuff, but then they do really well on the final papers. So this switch will be good for some styles, less good for others. but I think it'll reduce the stress of the no lates policy at least. So your first final paper is worth 150 points. The second one is worth 165. I used to have a bigger difference there because your research proposal, you've gotten to take in feedback on the literature review. But what I noticed is with all of just the way everything fell, not everyone, but most students tended to do a little better on their lit review than they did on their research proposal. So I decided to add most of the new points to the lit review. Other activities, these are the activities that are not accepted late at all, makes up about a third of the class. And these are things like your article notes, your articles themselves. APA quizzes are worth 100 points. Those are the ones that I assign them when I think they're going to be useful to you, but they're one of the few things I have more I feel more flexible on. So it's one of the few places you can have a little flexibility with due dates. It's also nice if you're getting close to a point threshold, you could retake some old quizzes that you got, 9 out of 10 and try to do a little better. These can be challenging though. You can retake them as many times as you want, but often they're getting at very tiny details of APA style. And this is where a lot of the work from, say, academic writer gets evaluated. Discussions, usually I'll kind of say what I want. Usually you'll have, well, this is a little more generic, but you'll see descriptions of what's expected. It's a lot more of posting, kind of sharing your writing or doing more informal check-ins. I usually assign small groups just to reduce the workload for you and to help. A big goal for me in these online discussions is to build camaraderie and a sense of being in a group, having a group identity, having people who are going on this journey with you. And especially now, even in the in-person class, we don't have that same. You will have a group that you meet with at the same time most weeks, but you don't get that same interaction that we used to do in the past. And again, it's a nice trade-off because you get a lot more time outside of class to get class stuff done. And occasionally, if a lot of people withdraw, I sometimes will have to flip groups, kind of redistribute some groups. If you need to do responses and not enough people from your group have posted, feel free to go look at other groups. That's completely fine. And part of what you do is informal check-ins. It's kind of silly and light. It's meant to be an easy way to give you some padding points and to help you build those relationships so that when you do start sharing your writing and commenting on each other's, that's a really vulnerable thing. And so I want you to have that. I also want you to have a place to be able to say, I'm really stressed out about this, and to have other people say, I know it's been really stressful. And maybe some of them will say, yeah, it's stressful, and this is what's been helping me. And maybe you can try that too. But even just saying, yeah, I'm really stressed too, can be really helpful. And that kind of stuff just doesn't happen by accident, especially in online groups. Also, please connect with each other outside of Blackboard. You need spaces not with me in them. Because although the discussion boards are mostly you, I am seeing and evaluating. And especially the check-ins, I kind of scan to see if there's something that really needs to be addressed. So I really recommend having more informal spaces, WhatsApp group, I can't talk now, WhatsApp groups or other, any spaces where you can connect with your students. So feel free to, not just feel free, I strongly encourage you to connect with others in this class. Assignments, most of the specific assignments are pretty small. The goal, there's 2 papers that are goals. You'll write about 10 to 12 pages for your final paper, but honestly, I don't know for sure because there's not a page requirement. I care more about your quality of writing. There's a few different kinds of assignments you'll do. You'll do the quizzes. Workload and pacing. It is an intense workload, especially for the online class. This is week 1. Most of these assignments, though, are fairly small. And I know some people would prefer to just have a few big assignments that they work toward. Others really like having lots of small ones. I have divided things up to be across several days, but everything for this week, it's not always true, but everything for this week you could sit down and do on day one. I break it up so that because students seem to hate a big pile of assignments on one day more than they hate assignments sprinkled throughout the week. So this is when they're due, but it's not when you have to do them. Occasionally there are some things that you need feedback for, like you need me to approve, let's see, so where are your, so you submit articles on Thursday the 20th. You'll want to wait for me to approve at least one of those before you finish up your paraphrase writing sample. And I will be on Thursday, well, and actually the first week I am, really the entire course, but especially the first week, every spare minute I have, I'm coming into the online course and grading. And the first few weeks for the in-person course. The in-person course, there's more things scheduled to be due on days that we meet, so I divide things out a little differently. But I still try to spread everything else out a little bit. And again, it's a steady stream of small things, but often, there are some things you need feedback from one thing before you can do the next, but a lot of it you can sit down and do all at once. So for example, for this week, ideally you would get some feedback on your paraphrase writing sample before you would do your notes, but other than that, you could do everything on day one. Discussion boards, you'll need to wait to get some feedback from other people. So you could, most weeks you could do it in one or two, in like 2, maybe 3 sittings. But keep in mind, instead of just saying, okay, submit to me some article notes, first you submit 3 articles. Then you submit a reference page. Then you submit a single paraphrase to get feedback on. Because I don't want you to do everything wrong and have wasted so much work. I want you to get feedback very quickly so that you can do the next step better. So then you do 1 article note. You get feedback on that. You submit 2 more article notes. You find 3 more articles. And then you do your last 3 article notes. So it's a lot of back and forth and layering, and everything really does build. That's the other reason I'm really strict about late stuff, because each, they're not all distinct. Each thing leads into the next thing. I try really hard not to have a lot of wasted things. Course schedule. Instead of having it in the syllabus, I have it in its own document, which is this weekly to-do list that I've been pulling up over here. I have, the top of it, I have a table of contents, because when you get down to, module 7, it would be a lot of scrolling to get down there. So instead, you can just click here and go right to where you want to go. The first couple weeks, let me scroll out again just so you can kind of see the scope. The first couple weeks have lots and lots of videos, lots of small assignments, and then things slow down a little bit. The article notes are bigger assignments, but as you get more familiar with them, they go a lot faster. You're looking for especially the last 3 notes are a little less detailed. And as we get closer to submitting your paper, there's fewer readings and videos and fewer assignments. Then there's a big push again as you're doing, because this method outline is 3 separate parts. And there's a lot of videos walking you through those. And then things kind of slow down again. One thing I'll point out, the videos, most of them are meant to go with an assignment, and so it's not that you have to watch the entire video and then do the assignment. You can watch the video, you can skip around, you can fast forward. However, if you don't watch the video and then you don't know how to do the assignment, I don't know that I can help you. Although if you're still watching the syllabus video this late in, you're probably not one of the people I need to be worried about for that. But I do get it a lot where people will, maybe not a lot, but enough. It's very frustrating when it happens. When people come to class and say, I have no idea how to do this, it doesn't make sense, and they want me to explain everything to them, and I said, okay, what, did you watch the video? And they'll say no. So I'm not offended if people don't watch it, but I am annoyed if people don't watch it and then want a lot of help. This is the help. This is the way that you learn in this class. And I know this style isn't comfortable for everyone, but it's the style that we have. So again, late policies, very specific things are taken late. Most assignments are not. Make sure you take time each week to figure out what's coming up. It moves very quickly. This is designed to where it could be printed out as a checklist, or you could make a copy and use it and just make your own copy and kind of delete things or use strike through as you get through things. I know Blackboard's not always the best at helping you keep track of things. Let's see, the last thing for the syllabus is just academic policies. Academic integrity is a really big deal. Plagiarism is a big deal. I build a lot of this course around teaching you how to write correctly because many students are plagiarizing without realizing it, or just because they have no idea what else to do. So plagiarism is the most typical issue in this course. Direct quotation, even a few exact words of a source, must have quotation marks, and passages which parallel the thought or expression of the source even without using the same words. And in this case, you can have something where you've given an in-text citation, but you are too closely paralleling. And so you should have some quotation marks. And usually in that case, you have a few of the exact words. That's not to say that every time you have 3 words in a row that were in the original source, it's plagiarism. But if you are closely following the structure of the original and have a few words that are the same, now it's pretty clearly plagiarism, even if most of it is rewritten. Accessibility, if you have accessibility issues, please talk with me. I try to set up the course to be as universally accessible as possible. There are no timed quizzes and things. Usually the due dates, you have everything you need as far as resources in the class to work on whatever schedule works for you. If you need additional time for assignments, sometimes there's an issue with if there's too tight of a turnaround for things. So we can talk more about that. And also there can just sometimes be an issue where if you take extra time on one assignment, where do you get the time from on the next assignment? So we can certainly navigate any documented accessibility issues. If you have an undocumented disability, but there are things that are set up that could just be set up differently to be more accessible, let me know. I can't necessarily make accommodations for someone for an individual without a documented disability, but sometimes I may be able to just make things more accessible for everyone. Recording is only an issue for in-person because so in-person, talk with me and we will discuss. One of the difficulties is a lot of the class time is spent giving feedback to other people, so we will navigate how to make sure you get to record your piece. One of the nice things about virtual meetings is that because we do a one-on-one meeting at the end of your literature review, especially it's an option for the online class, it's a requirement for the in-person class, and it's nice because you get to record it and it's captioned and it's lovely for anyone with any kind of processing issue. You can it frees you up to be fully present. Let me check what I want to talk about for the in-person class. So check the attendance policy. I do take attendance. Right now, with the pandemic the way it is, I am very, very generous in what I forgive for absences. That doesn't necessarily, an absence is different from you can make up the work anytime. Those are different conversations. But I'm very generous in what I do. Please don't come to class if you're sick. And I'm kind of working out how I can handle that to make sure that people who are needing to quarantine can still get class contact. I think I might make sure that the last group that does any assignment is a virtual group to be a catch-all for everyone who couldn't come at their usual time. Participation, if you're going to be if we're going to be virtual, please have your video on. It really makes a big difference, at least for part of the time. Try to be in the calmest space you can. I know sometimes Wi-Fi is an issue. There's a lot of things that can be barriers. If you have a pet, please don't turn your camera off just because you have a cat. Oh my goodness, I need more cats on camera. So the in-person class, you will use the same videos that the online class uses. The videos assign and walk through the assignments, you try the assignment, and then you get feedback. For the online class, you get feedback through Blackboard. For the in-person class, you get feedback in class. And one of the nice things is the way this is structured, honestly, it does pretty well when we need to go virtual. either because the university goes remote or because I need to quarantine or whatever. Masks, please wear your masks in class when it's required on campus or when I am allowed to, if it's not required in class campus, but I can require it in my classroom. If I'm not comfortable in the room, I'm going to leave. That's just where it is. Office hours I've talked about. There's another Google Chat. You can send it to me. The Caldwell one doesn't show up the same way my private one does, so it's not as good as I thought it would be. And it means that if I have my email, sometimes I turn my school email off on my phone over weekends and breaks, and that just doesn't work. All right. I think everything else is pretty much the same. So that is the syllabus. In person also has a meeting schedule. So, which may change, but I try to show when so you'll be assigned to a day, Tuesday or Thursday, and I'll send a poll to see. I might adjust quite how that happens for the semester. This is still from last fall. But there'll be a weekly calendar that tells you when to come. There are going to be some days that the whole class comes in, but most days you'll just come in once for the week. All right, I think that is it. Take good care. And I will be with you. Well, I'll be with you in a moment on your end. Take care. Bye-bye.